The tectonic forces that pushed the supercontinent together are still at work. Now they begin to buckle and split the land at its weakest points. The result is massive earthquakes. Lava exploits these new cracks and bursts out, forming chains of volcanoes. Molten rock spreads over thousands of miles, incinerating every living thing in its path. Life on the land will be tough beyond our imagination, causing mass extinctions. But this is nothing compared with the devastation facing life in the new superocean. In 250 million years, a single supercontinent will dominate the face of planet Earth. It has happened before. By exploring what happened back then, we now know that this single landmass could have a devastating effect on the oceans in the future. A lethal dose of carbon dioxide may cause a mass extinction, which could wipe out 96% of life in the sea. But where will this killer carbon dioxide come from? The biggest natural CO2 producers on the planet are well known, and the supercontinent of the future will have plenty of them. Volcanoes. To understand how the carbon dioxide from volcanoes leads to mass extinction in the oceans, Dr. James Barry has been studying what happens to one particular creature called a brachiopod during similar events.
Oceans became much more acid due to all the CO2 that was released by volcanic action over 100,000 years. And that increased acidity of the ocean has caused not only brachiopods, but many other types of animal life to go extinct.
Dr. Barry is trying to understand exactly what happens when carbon dioxide levels suddenly shoot up. Among the first to feel it are shellfish.
These brachiopods are a curiosity. They're one of the earliest sort of real animal life forms that evolved on this planet. 400 million years ago, they were one of the most dominant forms of life on the planet. But they went from 30,000 species down to about 300. They're the poster child for how to go extinct.
Brachiopods had survived everything the Earth could throw at them for hundreds of millions of years. Yet it was volcanic eruptions on land that wiped out 99% of brachiopod species in the sea. Barry's research reveals how. Brachiopods are highly sensitive to carbon dioxide levels. The excess CO2 from volcanoes dissolves in the water, making it acidic.
Once it enters the ocean, it combines and reacts with seawater to form carbonic acid. And that changes the balance of chemistry in the ocean.
As the sea becomes more acidic, the brachiopods die out. In 250 million years, the hard shells of all marine invertebrates dissolve in the acidic water. As their inhabitants die, a big link in the food chain collapses. Their predators starve, and the lack of food goes right to the top of the chain. At the same time as the food chain is collapsing, another brutal consequence of a single supercontinent will be reaching its endgame. 80% of marine species live close to the coastline. With all the land locked up, there's less coast to go around. Competition for the prime real estate gets fierce. The coastline of the future supercontinent could be 70% less than it is today. So the next supercontinent will be deadly. In 250 million years, an arid desert on land and an acid ocean means a mass extinction that will make the death of the dinosaurs look like a sideshow. But amazingly, some plants, some animals will survive. those that can adapt. Creatures like snakes and spiders that thrive in the heat. Low hardy bushes and types of cacti may be able to evolve. Life will endure for 1 billion years to come. It's only then that the final extinction of life on our planet begins. The end of all life on land. 1 billion years in the future, the world is going to get hotter. All stars, like our sun, go through a cycle of life and death. Today the sun is middle-aged, but in 1 billion years, it will be that much closer to death. As it burns through the remainder of its fuel, internal processes will cause it to expand, bringing its surface ever closer to the Earth. The temperature will soar. It is now 86 degrees and climbing. For mankind, another 18 degrees higher, and we will have reached our physical limit. Blood thickens, strokes and organ failure follows. Sometime in the next 1 billion years, humanity will cease to function. At this point, we will have disappeared forever from the face of the Earth. But other kinds of life will be able to survive. Here at the California Academy of Sciences, Professor Lynn Rothschild searches the history of past extinctions for examples of what creatures might be able to survive in a world twice as hot as today.
What I'm holding here is an ammonite, and these were extremely successful group of invertebrates. They were wonderful predators, and they went extinct at the end of the Cretaceous. Not their fault. They were wonderful at the time, but they went.
As the sun expands and the world heats up, it all comes down to luck. If you happen just by chance to be better suited to the new world, you'll make it. If not, it's just bad luck. Only the most extreme adaptations can survive. But as conditions become worse, life on land heads toward its final moments. It begins with the plants. Atmospheric scientist Professor James Casting is one of only a few people in the world to have figured out what happens to the plants in 1 billion years from now. He's discovered that a drastic fall in CO2 will wipe most of them out.
CO2 will drop by a factor of 1/2. That will wipe out 95% of the plants on Earth.
Geological processes are at work today that absorb carbon dioxide and dump it in deep ocean sediments. But like all chemical processes, the higher the temperature, the faster it works. Supercharged by the hot Earth 1 billion years from now, it wipes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Deprived of CO2, plant life suffocates and dies. The last remnants of our green Earth turns brown and dead. One vast desert covers the land.
It's really hard to imagine a future without any plants. I guess the best way to imagine it is to go up into the desert. In a way, it's a very beautiful environment, but it is very barren, and it doesn't seem like home.
Without plants, the food chain collapses. The plant eaters starve, and their predators follow. Animals, insects, reptiles, and mammals. For life on land, everyone's luck has finally run out. There is only now one place on the entire planet that does continue to support life. The oceans. But 1 billion years in the future, as the dying sun swells and the temperatures rise, the oceans begin to evaporate. As the water level drops, they become more and more salty. To understand what the oceans of the future will be like, Professor Rothschild has come to these salt ponds outside San Francisco, where seawater is evaporated to produce salt.
What happens here, and you'd imagine would happen on the Earth, is that as the concentration of salt goes up, 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 many of the organisms that we're familiar with, fish and kelp and algae and manta rays and so on, drop out.